Hello YouTube, it's Elliot, and I'm here with another action figure review. I think this is only my second one, but it's a Mcfarlane figure for My Hero Academia Stain. These two, this has been released for a long time. This is one of the newer figures, probably in the last wave before Stain. Uh, I just want to cover this figure since there probably are plenty of reviews for these guys. I put them in here for actual size comparisons. So Stain is the main event. I'm going to talk about what Mcfarlane is doing better with these figures, and in some cases maybe what hasn't changed, what he's not doing so good with. Let's get right into the review. I don't have the box. I don't really review boxes, and box pictures are so easy to find on the internet. If you guys want to look up a box, it's pretty easy for most of us. But go ahead, take a look at the figure. You can see the sculpt is dead on to the animation. Figure comes with a sword. This is the only accessory besides the little black stand that most of the figures come with. These feet are crazy. I love it. I love it. And we're going to talk about articulation first, because I think once you get a good look at the sculpt, again, you can take a look at still pictures that a lot of people have, and even the promotional shots. This thing hasn't strayed very far from the promotional shots. But, covering the details, one thing I wanted to point out, these are stiff. And Mcfarlane generally uses a softer, pliable material when they're doing things that mirror soft goods, but this is really, really stiff. And as a matter of fact, and I don't know if you'll be able to see this, but behind here, at this connection, I don't know if can you see that white right there? That is stress mark from just moving this. Typically, you wouldn't find that. In most good action figures, you wouldn't see where they've made the compound so stiff that it'd make stress marks. But that is a thing. Moving into here, let me get his sword out. Pretty easy to take in and out. I did notice that the fingers are a lot more pliable than I've seen in previous Mcfarlane figures, which is a good thing. Nobody wants to be having to break out the hairdryer every time you want to put something in an action figure's hand, an accessory. So he does have knives. They're sculpted, non-removable knives. I really don't mind, I suppose, because they would be a pain. They'd probably be falling off pretty easily if they were removable. He does have one more knife here, so like a total of 5 knives. There's one on the back that's sculpted in there. Yeah, it would be nice to be able to have him holding a knife in each hand. I'm not going to lie, but again, $20 price point, very, very good sculpt, good paint. I guess you can't ask for too much. Let's see. All right, let's go over articulation. That's where I like to start anyway. So his head. One other reviewer, I just watched a review of this guy before I did this. I'm disappointed in the head, as not the sculpt, but the articulation. The head and neck are one piece, and up until recently, Mcfarlane has been doing a separate neck, just like a separate neck, almost like a tube, where there's a ball joint at the bottom of the neck and a ball joint at the top, so you get a really, really good range of motion. This only has a ball joint at the bottom of the neck, and it's restricted by the sculpt, and this is very hard. Like this red scarf is extremely hard. So you do not get hardly any up and down movement with this figure. And I'm not scared really to move my figures around because I prefer an action figure that moves. And if it breaks in normal play, I'd rather not have it. But you can turn it left. It runs into the sculpt here. Turn it this way, runs into the sculpt here. So you're not getting much movement out of that. So that's disappointing. The shoulders and arms basically are the same. Standard Mcfarlane fare. You'll see, if I can get this, really good movement here, up to 90, no problem. And then you have the little joint cap here. You can see that moves up, down, around, forward, back. You got pretty good movement in there. I think this is something he's gotten better at doing. I have some figures where this came and it was just poorly sized. It was completely frozen. It didn't work well. I see that they're actually starting to get a hang of it, and they're making it a little bit better where you can start to maximize the movement out of that joint. So good for them. You got a bicep swivel, double jointed elbows that are effective as always for Mcfarlane. You can see that. And the wrist joint on this is hindered by the Sculpt. These wrist wraps keep the hand from moving very much. You have the same little ball joint that Mcfarlane always uses, but it's not effective. It's not effective. Okay, moving to the waist. You know, there's usually two joints. I'm gonna show the one here at the bottom. And this might go out of order, but you can see he has one here at the bottom that is going to provide the majority of the movement. This is a soft sculpted rubber piece, and he is sculpted bent over. Let me get this arm out the way, and you can maybe see what I'm talking about. He's sculpted bent over. So you can't fully straighten him out, which is fine. The guy looks like that in the animation, but you can move it. Here's but it springs back because of the rubber piece. And you can get him bent even more, so that's not too bad. You can get him bent down pretty much. And then this is about the extent of it being straight, but it is pre-posed, and it is kind of bent over. Now, while we're here, look at the legs. I have these bent pretty much. I'm gonna straighten them out. Okay, the legs are pre-bent as well. A little bit of a bend in those. You can raise this. This is soft and it's not hindered. You can bring it very far back, which is great. I think this is what Mcfarlane does better than most. And this is what you see, and I've wanted to mention this before. The Mcfarlane style of articulation is not the original, and I think that's fine. I think that we've been collecting action figures for so long. We should find what works and use it across the board. You know, this stuff is not rocket science. You know, collectors want to have good likenesses to the characters that they want, and they want to see really good articulation. This is very similar to what Storm Collectibles does. The rubber torsos, the type of articulation that will give you that kind of movement in the thighs. You see the hip articulation that we're familiar with. Having a rubber, somewhat crotch area gives you the movement that you want, that's unrestricted and unhindered. Now, we know Mcfarlane doesn't have the best thigh swivel. I mean, it barely moves. Most people are doing modifications if they want a thigh swivel. I'm not crazy angry about the thigh swivel. Just want to show this, but this is 100% the same type of deal that you'll find in a Storm Collectibles figure. And I like it. I think it's great. If he wants to add the thigh swivel, I'm for it. If he doesn't, I'm really not that perturbed with it, because the rest of the stuff generally is so good. But go back to this head here. This might be a trend, because some of the Batman figures, which they're supposed to be DC, DC multiverse, let's just call it what it is, right? Some of the Batman figures that he's putting out have come with a head and neck connected, which is reducing articulation, which I think he shouldn't do it. It may be a cost feature, because it was working fine with all of the other figures, from the Fortnite stuff to his early DC Collectibles stuff to the My Hero Academia stuff. This has two separate pieces for the neck, so you get articulation everywhere. I hope this is not a trend. The one thing, moving on with the articulation, you have a double jointed knee. You can see that plenty of bend. I don't have any issues with that. The Sculpt does restrict it from going much further, but I know a lot of people have been. One of my favorite reviewers, Robo from Foosh, he always wants to try to get the figure to touch his heel to the rear end, and I'm like, that's hard for me to do as a human being, as a flexible human being. I rarely touch my heel to my butt, so I don't really know what the thrill is with that thing. So I'm not really worried about that. If I can get a usable bend, some really thoughtful articulation, that's what I want. So the last piece of articulation that I'm going to talk about is my biggest complaint with Mcfarlane in general is the ankles. He uses the same ball joint stuff in the ankles that he does in the wrist. Okay, so the ankles, what he did right this time was he used a large enough ball joint. That ball joint fills up the space. There's not a bunch of gapping in the shoe and the ankle. But what he's doing wrong and continuing to do wrong is this is an off-the-shelf ball joint. This is like a Reveltech ball joint, model kit ball joint. It's a simple ball joint that rotates in a hinge style with a peg on each side. And all he has to do is sculpt the foot out more so that you can face that pin forward, just like Marvel Legends does, and just like so many other, like Figma does, like so many other action figure companies do. Again, not rocket science. That wheel rolls really good, so why reinvent it? You keep sticking that joint down straight so you get more rotation than you do any kind of tilt. By the time this thing starts to tilt, it's actually just turning the foot at an awkward angle. So you don't get any good tilt out of this figure. You do get decent motion, but like a lot of other reviewers will mention and notice, these things have very heavy detents. I like action figure joints to be on the stiffer side, but detents are different, and detents keep your figure from having fluid motion. He needs to have finer adjustment in these ankles, and they need to have the peg facing forward so we can get a usable rocker in these feet. That everything else, even the nitpick in the neck, everything else is not a deal breaker. These ankle tilts are somewhat of a deal breaker for me. Like figures that I would buy, figures that I have zero interest in because I like good action figures, if all the articulation works well. But as it stands, if I'm not really interested in a character and it has flaws like this that'll make it hard to stand, I'll pass on the figure. This one is fantastic. I'm very interested in the figure. I think the sculpt is awesome. He did some good stuff with the ankles. He's just missing the boat on this. And the reason this is the way it is, I believe, is because they do this toe hinge, which is basically useless. Look at how ugly that is. Once you separate the foot and the toe like this, it's ugly. I would prefer to cut this joint out. Just leave it alone. Make it a straight foot so that we can go further down in here and put the joint at the correct angle and give me a good rocker. Give me a good rocker. Again, I'm hoping, the reason I'm talking so much about this, because I hope other more popular reviewers mention the same thing. I do believe Todd McFarlane is interested in improving his product. I see improvements from as he's been going through all of his lines, but this is major to me. The rest of the stuff is minor. This is major. So just fix those few things, and pound for pound champ action figure company for 2020 and moving forward. The sword, with the edges all battered up, looks really, really good. Sorry about the rant, guys. I don't mean it to be a rant. I just wanted to be clear as to how I think McFarlane needs to go with refining these figures, because he's doing a great job. And like every other reviewer says, man, let's get less Batman for his other line and get more DC multiverse. I'm over that Batman stuff. It's good. I bought a lot of them, but you probably won't see me reviewing much of them because they're just everywhere. We're just inundated with Batman stuff from Mcfarlane. I think that needs to stop. I'm very excited for his Mandarin Spawn, and I'm looking forward to his Kickstarter Spawn. I collected a lot of that stuff way back in the day, and it fell short on articulation. So I hope that we move to more articulated Spawn figures here shortly. So anyway, that's my Stain overview. I won't call it like a review, but it is an overview and my commentary on Mcfarlane's pros and cons. I think he's doing a great job. I want to see more My Hero figures. I want to see better articulation in the ankles. This thing was $20 on Amazon.com. I think it's worth it. If you're interested in this figure, if you collect My Hero, pick it up. This figure's an 8 out of 10. Easy. So, thank you.